here because it was in the shade, but sadly, the sun has moved.
Oh yeah, it's unplugged. Huh?
Yes, that would be.
Yeah, this glare's kind of nasty.
Is there a way that y'all can make sure nobody walk in like this line of sight? And like,
Buenos días, good morning,
well,
everyone.
I'm just hoping there.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's
but I mean, I can't help that either way. Let that think about it.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everybody. Let's do that again. Buenos días. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos hoy en este día muy especial. Thank you all for joining us in this special day. It's a beautiful day, and we have a beautiful thing to celebrate, right? So let me start at the top by recognizing those people that got us here. Déjame reconocer primero a todos aquellos que nos ayudó a llegar a este momento, nuestros grandes líderes. Let me start by recognizing Delegate Mark Chang. Mark Chang, say hi. Our amazing Council President Montgomery County, Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. I think, somebody right next to me. We'll hear from her a little bit later. But let's hear another champion for Prince George's County Chair, Crystal Orellana. We have the office of Delegate Lorik Charkodian. I saw her a little earlier. Kate Stewart, our wonderful council member. And do we have Kristen Mink in the house? Kristen, oh, well, office of Kristen. A great champion also in Montgomery County. And the office of Delegate Denny Taveras. Oh, and of course, Mayor Selena Benitez, who, where are Selena? And of course, our wonderful partners that have been helping us, that have been championing us, that have been prioritizing these bills for our community. Folks like AFSCME, where's AFSCME? Youth United for Justice! Progressive Maryland, as always. ACLU, OPD, Brick Maryland, and the Teachers Association. All right. So, thank you all to the partners. Thank you to all our leaders, Montgomery County, Prince George's County. You guys have led the way. What you've accomplished in our counties has set the stage for what we're celebrating now that we accomplished in the state. All right. And as executive director, it never ceases to amaze me what we can accomplish when we work together. Como director de casa, a mí me enorgullece saber qué podemos hacer nosotros cuando luchamos juntos, cuando estamos organizados, y ver cómo ganamos siempre, ¿verdad? ¡Eso! Y eso estamos celebrando aquí. El hecho que la hicimos, se pudo, ¿verdad? We did it. We got the Community Trust Act passed. Model legislation leading the nation, not only in our jurisdictions, but all over the state. Wherever an immigrant goes across the state, they know now that they are protected by the Community Trust Act. Whether they travel from Montgomery to Prince George's to Baltimore to the west end of the state or on the eastern shore, they are protected by what was accomplished. Por todo lo que hicieron ustedes. Muchísimas gracias a todos y muchas felicidades. Because of that, now we know the Community Trust Act is law. We know our data is secure. The Data Privacy Act now is law. Despite what the oligarchs wanted, right? We know those data oligarchs were trying to defeat this law, and we passed it. You all passed it, ¿verdad? And let's not forget, no vamos a olvidarnos que iniciamos la sesión con la prohibición del 287G. Eso es algo con la cual empezamos. We started the legislative session shutting down 287G and finished it with the Community Trust Act, right? So this is why it is such a beautiful day today, to celebrate in community with all of the people that made this happen. We are not relying on one champion. We're not relying on one individual. This wasn't something that was given to us by a powerful person. This was something that we won as a community. Esto es algo que ganamos como comunidad, ¿verdad? Esto no fue algo que nos dieron. Esto no fue algo que un hombre poderoso nos otorgó por la bondad de su corazón. Esto es algo que ganamos cada uno de nosotros trabajando en conjunto, organizados. ¿Se pudo? Sí, se pudo. ¿Se pudo? Sí, se pudo. Sí, se pudo. Así es. So thank you all. We're going to start our session today with a prayer. And I'm honored to welcome Pastor Brian Murray to lead us in prayer. Pastor?
It's not impossible. They're just slow.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Reverend Dr. Brian Murray. I pastor a church in Catonsville, Maryland, and for probably the last maybe 15 or so years, I've been a member of Bridge, Maryland. Bridge started out as the Baltimore Regional Initiative for Developing Genuine Equality, and we grew to be a statewide effort that bends the arc of the universe toward justice. So we're not here just to celebrate a legislative victory this morning. We're also here to celebrate a moral one. And let me just say, as I was sitting and listening to the music and watching folks dance, for somebody who's from New York City and played high school basketball in the Manhattan Division of Public School Athletics, the music and the dancing to me just seemed like a Saturday afternoon. It just seemed like a regular Saturday afternoon. So let me just open up with a few comments and a word of prayer. Good morning, everyone. Grace and peace to all of you, and thank you for gathering in this space today. We come together with gratitude. Gratitude for the labor, the faith, the courage, and the persistence that made this moment possible. We give thanks to the CASA families who kept showing up, kept telling the truth, kept organizing, kept testifying, kept marching, kept praying, and kept believing that justice was still worth fighting for. We give thanks for allies who stood alongside them, and we give thanks for legislators who found the courage to act in a time when too many public officials across this nation have chosen fear over fairness, cruelty over community, and scapegoating over service. In Maryland, this work produced real victories. The Community Trust Act that was just mentioned limits state and local law enforcement cooperation with ICE, including barring detention for ICE transfers without a judicial warrant, except in limited cases. And it restricts asking detained people about their immigration status. After passage, as you know, most Maryland sheriffs filed a federal lawsuit challenging that law, arguing that it obstructs their work. But CASA and its partners have answered with a different witness, that the Community Trust Act protects communities and strengthens public safety because fear-driven collaboration with ICE erodes trust rather than builds it. And so here we are today, not only to celebrate policy, but to affirm a moral principle. Our neighbors are not disposable.
That's right.
Immigrant families are not political props. And human dignity is not up for negotiation. With that, let us pray. God of justice and mercy, we thank you for this gathering, for every family represented here, for every organizer, advocate, volunteer, attorney, ally, and legislator who helped bend this season toward justice. We thank you for the courage of the people. We thank you for the courage of the people, for the mothers and fathers who spoke when silence would have been safer, for the young people who stood up for a future that they deserve, for the workers, the dreamers, the elders, the leaders, and for all those who carried this struggle in their hearts and in their bodies. We thank you, O God, for reminding us that love is not weak, that compassion is not soft, and that justice is not a slogan. It is work, it is sacrifice, it is moral courage lived out in public. As today, as we celebrate these victories, keep us humble enough to give thanks, but clear-eyed enough to know that the work is not yet done. When some would use fear to divide neighbor from neighbor, teach us again that love casts out fear. When some would call exclusion security, teach us again that true safety is found in justice, dignity, and trust. When some would criminalize the stranger, remind us that Scripture commands us to welcome the stranger, to love our neighbor, and to remember that every human being bears your image. Bless the leaders in this space. Bless the families who have carried so much. Bless the lawmakers who chose conscience, and strengthen all those who must now defend these gains against the backlash, the distortion, and the attack. Give us staying power. Give us wisdom for the next fight. Give us discipline for the next assignment. And give us hearts big enough to not just win victories, but to build beloved community. Let this day be a day of joy. Let this be a day of remembrance. Let this be a day of renewed commitment. And let all that is said and done in this place honor the sacred truth that to care for our neighbors is holy work. In the name of the God who made us one human family. And let us all say, amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor, for those powerful words. And I wanted to jump off of some of the points that Pastor was making. Again, this victory belongs to all of us, right? But it took work. It took sacrifice. Este fue un trabajo de todos. Por eso estamos celebrando ahorita la victoria para todos. Porque fue un esfuerzo duro. Hubo mucho sacrificio que se tuvo que elaborar. Vimos activistas jóvenes compartiendo sus historias de trauma, de sacrificio, de separación de familias. Vimos a gente arriesgando sus trabajos, su identidad, para asegurarnos de que otras personas no sufran las mismas desgracias que ellos sufrieron. Vimos oficiales vimos nuestros líderes electos que tomaron la palabra y tomaron la carga de avanzar estos proyectos legislativos y tomar toda la derecha en su cara y todas las cosas y los ataques que recibían de todos lugares. Esto fue un requisito colectivo, fue un amor a uno de nosotros para todos. Esto fue una victoria comunitaria que la vamos a ver seguir creciendo y creciendo y creciendo, pero hay que defenderla, ¿verdad? Siempre hay que defenderla y hay que comprometernos a defenderla. So today, as the pastor said, we're celebrating a collective victory. But again, this victory took work, took sacrifice. It took young activists talking about their stories, talking about the separation of their families, talking about losing their parents. It took them sharing those stories for this victory to happen. It took husbands and wives talking about the pain that they have endured in the separation of their families, and also risking their own time in the United States and them being ripped away from their parents, from their children, to ensure that others behind them will not suffer the same that they have, right? It took the bravery of our elected officials to take on all those attacks they received in person and virtually and through comments, and their steadfast support to make this happen. If it were not for those collective efforts, we would not be here today. And it weren't for the bravery of our collective community, we would not be celebrating here on this beautiful sunny day. So thank you to everybody that moved this forward. And a reminder that, as the pastor reminds us, we must continue to defend these victories because they can easily be ripped away and ignored once the spotlight dims, right? So thank you all for your collective effort. Thank you all for what you have accomplished. And a reminder of what we're celebrating today. And a reminder of what the Community Trust Act has really accomplished and the Data Privacy Act has accomplished today. It means that no parent should not be afraid to dial 911 if they suffer an emergency. ¿Verdad? Es muy importante saber ahorita que con esta ley ningún padre, ningún hijo debe tener miedo a marcar el 911 por miedo de que la migra se lo va a llevar, ¿verdad? Ninguna víctima del crimen debe de temer cualquier tipo de interacción con el gobierno cuando necesita la intervención del gobierno. No victim of crime should be afraid of contacting a government official if they're in need. No witness should stay silent out of fear that reporting that crime would be a risk to their family, right? Nadie debe tener miedo de buscar atención médica si la necesita por esta victoria que estamos celebrando hoy. No one should be afraid to seek medical care, right? If they need it out of fear of being separated from their family, right? Because public safety ultimately depends on trust, and trust is what this bill was all about. Trust in our government, trust in our community, trust that our government will do what they're supposed to do, which is serve our community, ¿verdad? Por eso le decimos el acto de confianza, porque se trata de tener fe y confianza en nuestro gobierno, que funcione, que haga lo que debe de hacer, que es proveerle servicios a todos nosotros cuando lo necesitamos. Esa es la función del gobierno, ¿verdad? Y todos ustedes hicieron eso. We did all that, and we accomplished that. So, now, as we celebrate in community, we must remind ourselves to continue to defend our families. We must continue to defend our communities. We must continue defending the constitutional rights and freedoms that belong to all of us. And that work must start now, right? Entonces, tenemos que seguir en este trabajo. Tenemos que seguir protegiendo a nuestras familias. Tenemos que seguir defendiendo a nuestras comunidades. Y hay que seguir defendiendo los derechos constitucionales y ejerciéndolos, los que nos pertenecen a todos nosotros. Y ese trabajo empieza ahorita en defensa de estas victorias, ¿verdad? Hey. So, entonces ahora ya me cansé de hablar, so I'm done talking. Now let's hear like much more powerful speakers, and we're gonna bring up some amazing people that made this happen. Entonces ahora vamos a escuchar de esos campeones que nos ayudaron a llegar a este momento y esta victoria. Y comenzamos con un gran campeón acá en casa, el señor Evan. Por favor, Evan.
Good morning, my name is Evan. I'm 10 years old and I'm a fourth grader in Baltimore County. This year I went to Annapolis a lot to share the story of my uncle. He was my favorite uncle and I love him so much. Last year, my uncle was deported to Honduras, even though he hasn't been there since I was a kid. I miss him every day. I told the senators and the delegates to please take action to stop our families from being torn apart. I told them to pass laws so other kids don't have to go through what I went through. Today, the Community Trust Act becoming a law is a dream come true. I know this will help families like mine together. I feel so proud that sharing my story helped pass a law. I will keep speaking up until no more families are separated. ¡Sí se puede! ¡Sí se
Excellent. What I tell you about this gentleman, right? An amazing leader whose voice was so critical in all of those hearings and really changed the hearts and minds of many legislators. So, ahora vamos a escuchar de otra campeona excelente, la señorita Liliana. ¿Dónde está la señorita Liliana?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It's me again, Liliana. Many of you may remember me from Annapolis when I started my story of my dad, who was detained and ripped apart our lives. I spent weeks speaking at the start and local levels to pass a law to protect the families of young kids like me. And thank you to our advocacy. We won and passed all of them. Back when I was 10. Now I'm 11, guys! I still have my mom and my dad. Oh wait, which remembers me. Dad, come to the front! Everybody, please meet my dad. He's finally home. He would like to share a few words.
Good morning. Hola a todos. Yo soy Carlos, el papá de Liliana. Solo quería agradecer a Somos Casas y a todos los que aportan en que la voz de mi hija fuera escuchada y pudiera alzar su voz. Y gracias a todos esos y a todas las personas, hoy estoy aquí junto a ella y al resto de mi familia. Muchas gracias y recordemos en nunca y rendirlos y nunca pensar que nuestra voz es importante y especialmente la de nuestros hijos. Y quiero agradecerles a todos por todos los esfuerzos que están haciendo y Dios me los bendiga.
I want to thank politicians for being bold and brave like me to meet the moment and protect kids like me. And I want to thank the community because we made this possible. Always remember that when you fit your voice, things can change. Let's go celebrate. Thank you.
So I wanted to provide a little context for what you just witnessed, for those that haven't been following along. First of all, even though she can't say the word, that is the best advocate we have. So the last time we saw Liliana, she was continuing to advocate sharing the story of the separation of her family and the detention of her father. This was a critical testimony that really moved us and moved a lot of those officials that were on the fence about this act. And her bravery and her testimony led directly to that victory. And what we saw today, right now, is the reunification, because Carlos has now been reunited with Liliana over the past 10 days, I think. He's been back since being detained in Texas. So, bien, vamos a celebrar otra vez la reunificación de esta familia bella, que no nada más está celebrando un momento muy especial en familia, pero sus historias, su liderazgo ha llegado a cambiar la vida de miles de personas en Maryland, y por eso les decimos muchas gracias, Liliana, muchas gracias a Carlos. Ustedes son un ejemplo que han llegado a un verdadero cambio en el estado de Maryland. Muchas gracias, Carlos. So now I'd like to bring up another champion whose leadership has been amazing here in Prince George's County. We're welcoming Chair of the Prince George's County Council, Chris Arrieta.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here today. We had a long fight this session to make sure that we protected communities across this state. This is a huge victory, and we have so much to be happy and to celebrate. But we also can't take our eyes off of the ball. We understand that the racism and the hatred isn't going to take a day off. They are prepared to fight every victory that we have already made. They are prepared to fight to break down every policy change that we passed. And the reality is that racism doesn't get tired. We do. But we also have to remind ourselves that justice doesn't get tired, and equity doesn't get tired, and the fight never will stop. So we have to continue to pour into each other and lift each other up and remember these victories in this moment when it gets difficult. And understand that we are not fighting for a thought or a nameless name on a piece of paper, but we are fighting for that little girl and that father that we just heard from. I will never forget the moment I had to testify in front of a judge to have my dad be able to stay in this country, because they wanted to deport him. And I had to prove that our family was real. I was brought to tears when I heard that little girl speak, because it took me back to that moment. And we thought we had come a long way. But it's a reminder in this administration how quickly we can be brought back. And we cannot forget what is on the line. So I ask everyone to celebrate today, to be happy and joyous in the victories that we have already won, but be reminded that we are in a moral war, not here in this state or in Prince George's County, but in this country. And we have to put on our armor every single day and fight not just for the policies, but fight to make sure we send the right people to represent us. Because the reality is no one should have had to go to Annapolis. No one should have to come to the county buildings to get equity and justice. We should have sent the right people there, that they would do it when no one is watching, when no one is protesting, when no one is rallying, because they are conscious calls them to do it. So I ask you in this election cycle that we make sure we send the right people back, like Delegate Ashanti Martinez, the amazing Whip standing right next to me. But I ask you that we also fight to make sure we elect the people that care. truly care. Because I tell you, when the door closes, these people don't care about us. I've seen them firsthand, and they will tell you anything you want to hear when their name is on the ballot. But the reality is they are bought and they are paid for, and some of them are corrupt at their core. And we have all of the power in this season. So I ask you to send the right people so that the next time there's a question of justice and equity and what's right on a vote, on a bill, and on a policy, maybe we don't have to come. Maybe we don't have to protest. Maybe we don't have to rally because we sent the right people there. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Powerful. That's 100% accurate. And let me introduce our next counterpart, another person that we would love to send back, and a leader that in Montgomery County County Council, our chair, Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, please.
I am so proud of our children, guys. These kids are amazing, and it's a reflection of our immigrant community. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. I'm the president of the Montgomery County Council. I would like to recognize Councilmember Kate Stewart, who's here with me, and all of us together. I have the great pleasure of working in a county and also in a state that really values people and is working really hard to uplift the most vulnerable. When it comes to the Trust Act, and as you know, we passed the Trust Act in Montgomery County as soon as I became council president, and I'm proud of it. And folks have no idea, it took years to pass the Trust Act in Montgomery County. And it took years to pass the Trust Act in the state of Maryland. And I think we actually inspired them. But it just is a reminder that advocacy does take time. And I say that as a former lobbyist for CASA. And the DREAM Act took us like 10 years to pass. But the work continues, and at the end of the day, we're gonna continue working together to evolve society together. And thank you for all your work.
Thank you so much. And absolutely 100% correct. If it were not for the trust acts that were already moving and approved and already in law here in Montgomery County and in Prince George's County, we could have never gotten. And shout out to Baltimore and shout out to Baltimore County as well. If it were not for that local work that all of these leaders had worked on for years, we would have not got to where we are today. So definitely. Now let's talk about somebody that Crystal introduced us before, our amazing whip, and somebody who also used to have an office here, Ashante Martinez.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am House Majority Whip Ashanti Martinez. I also have the privilege of being chair of the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus. And before this last legislative session, I was reminding everyone who would listen that we have a responsibility in the General Assembly to protect the most vulnerable among us. And I carried that message on throughout the session to remind my colleagues of the work that we do in our very short but very powerful 90-day session. And so today is a day to celebrate. We celebrate today because Maryland chose community over fear, dignity over division, and trust over intimidation. Alongside CASA advocates, community leaders, and immigrant families across our state, we secured some of the most strongest protections for immigrant communities anywhere in the country. That's right. That deserves applause. Yeah. And these victories matter. They matter individually, but collectively, they show how together as a state, we can make powerful change. The Data Privacy Act helps ensure that personal information cannot be weaponized against Maryland families. The Community Trust Act straightens the principles that our local governments and public institutions should serve residents, not be an extension of this federal immigration enforcement. The No Kings Act affirms that no one is above the law and that our constitutional systems of checks and balances matters. And we also prohibited the 287G agreements, making Maryland send a very clear message that local law enforcement should be focused on safety, not carrying out Trump's horrific deportation agenda. Together, these policies create something bigger than just one bill. They create the foundation of trust. Trust that families can send their kids to school. Trust that people can seek medical care without having to fear that they'll be arrested. Trust that survivors can report crimes. Trust that residents can engage with their government without fear, and trust that communities can really build to become stronger. Because Maryland is better when our communities feel safer. And at a time when immigrant communities across this country are over and under a relentless attack, Maryland is stepping up and showing what leadership looks like. We are providing protections of constitutional rights, respecting due process, and supporting all of our communities and not seeing them as political liabilities. This is our fundamental responsibility. And today, Maryland is not just passing good policy, we're becoming a blueprint for the rest of the nation on how to support their neighbors. To CASA and every organizer, advocate, and community member here that helped make all of these victories possible, I just want to deeply say thank you, because your voices did not go unheard. As the council chair said, many a times when we go in those rooms, when we close that door, we have to have really tough conversations with our colleagues about what we face at home. And it's each and every one of you showing up, telling your stories, talking about your neighbors, doing the work to collectively come together that these wins were possible. And I just want to say that the work is going to still continue. This fight is not over, but joy is a major part of resistance. And so today we celebrate. Today we dance, today we give each other hugs and kisses, but we know that tomorrow we're back at work again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Amazing. And now I'd like to bring up to the podium somebody that, I mean, let's be honest, every time we have a difficult bill, we go straight to his office and ask him to sponsor it. Senator Clarence Lam, please.
Thank you. And I also want to recognize we are joined now by our majority leader of the House, Delegate David Moon of Montgomery County as well. And it was very true. And I, you know, I remember, just to kind of peel the curtains back a little bit here, at the beginning of session in the Senate, we have limits on the number of bills that we can file. So our House members here have the privilege of filing unlimited number of bills, and for us in the Senate, we have to figure out which bills we're going to prioritize and sponsor. And towards the end of the deadline of when we were trying to decide what bills to sponsor, I was sitting there in our office with my chief of staff, and we already had 4 anti-ICE bills. 4 anti-ICE bills. And I'm like, can we find a 5th one? My chief of staff is looking at me like, do we really need a 5th one? And we were looking through all the bills that were left and going through our list, and the fifth one was the Community Trust Act. And why that matters is because were it not for the Senate version of that bill, we probably wouldn't be standing here today. Because it was the Senate version, and my House colleague, Delegate Phillips, was a huge champion for this too. And we worked very closely together. Sometimes one squirts through and the other one doesn't. He did tremendous work over there, but because the Senate one was the one that moved first, it was the one that we were able to get through. And were it not for that sponsorship in the Senate, there would have been no Senate bill, because I don't think anyone else is picking it up. And we may not be here today celebrating this victory. And so, you know, when you think back and look back on those kind of juncture points of decisions that are made and not made, you know, and why CASA is a tremendous champion, why I sponsored the DREAM Act originally, why I sponsored the Healthy Babies Act originally, and why, you know, both these bills actually, and Delegate Cherkourian is the House sponsor, the version that got passed, I was the Senate sponsor. Both these bills were ones that we wanted to champion, and we managed to fit in because they were so important to this community to be able to continue to uplift. And we also got another one too, where we now have a policy in place so that when doctors and nurses see ICE at their front doors in the hospital, in the emergency department, they will know how to respond and push back against ICE as well. And so that was another bill that I sponsored that we got past this session, and it's really to help support and uplift all of the work that you do. And I just want to say that the work that comes is still really, really important. That we've seen just less than a week ago, The majority of the sheriffs, right-wing extremist sheriffs here, filed a lawsuit in the state of Maryland to block the Community Trust Act, wholly as a political stunt, because they're running for re-election. And it is shameful, because these are people's lives. These are communities, these are families that are being torn apart, and they're playing political games to demonstrate their fealty to Donald Trump and his private police force. That is shameful, and that's why we're standing here today, because we recognize there's still more work to be done. We will push back against that. We will make sure our Data Privacy Act is properly implemented. Let me just tell you, when Delegate Cherkun and I were working on this bill, we came across the fact that we had passed the Data Privacy Act a couple years ago to make sure that ICE would not go through our driver's license databases to do facial recognition. In the course of getting this bill passed, we found out that our state had not properly implemented the prior bill, and they were still going through our driver's license databases and sharing information with other states as well. And it probably were not for, and it is very shameful, were not for an article that happened to come out because of a Maryland driver, an immigrant, who was picked up by ICE because they were able to use his driver's license still earlier this year to figure out that he was an immigrant, that we may not have gotten that bill passed at the very end as well. And so it just demonstrates that we have to follow up, we have to push back, we have to continue to fight back, because there's still more work to be done. There's still going to be more work to be done next year, because this ICE deportation machine and Donald Trump's private police force is not backing down. They're not stopping. But it's really the power of the folks like yourself who are here, and I want to give these final shout outs to Evan and to Juliana, because you came down to Annapolis, you spoke before all of us, you demonstrated courage and bravery, willing to share your story and explain why these bills were so important. And guess what? Your message was heard. We got these bills passed so that we could bring back folks like Carlos and make sure that no one else will be deported like Carlos out of Maryland again. We will continue this effort. We will continue to work with CASA. I will always be a strong supporter of all the work that you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Si se puede!
Thank you so much. And I want to take a brief pause and reflect a little bit on what the senator's comments, knowing that just because we pass a bill does not mean that the victory is done, right? We've seen violations happen, and it's important to educate our community. It's important to share information about people's rights and call out when they're being violated, right? We at CASA, we're going to undergo an education campaign to let people know about their rights, let them know where to report a violation, because you all know CASA likes to sue Trump, and we will sue anybody and win. So we're not afraid of calling out violations, and not with the partnership that we have with these great legislators that will call out any violations. Entonces, muy importante, nomás quería hacer una pausa para recordarles a todos que acuérdense que estos derechos hay que ejercerlos, ¿verdad? Ganamos victorias, pero siempre existen oponentes y siempre existen gente que no está contento y va a hacer todo lo posible para evadir su cumplimiento con la ley. Entonces, hay que conocer nuestros derechos y saber exactamente cuando existen las violaciones y llegar a organizaciones como nosotros en CASA para saber cómo reportar esas violaciones y saber que si existe una violación, nosotros los vamos a demandar y vamos a asegurarnos que sufren la consecuencia de esa violación, ¿verdad? Entonces, muy importante para todos. And on that note, I wanted to bring in some amazing leaders who helped us with this legislation, whose help would not, if we wouldn't have these people's help, we would not have as strong of a bill as we have today. So I'd like to welcome in Stephanie Wolf from the Office of Public Defender. Stephanie, please.
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Wolf. I'm the Director of Immigration at the Public Defender's Office. And I wanted to remind you of what the Community Trust Act really does. The Community Trust Act is based in the idea that real public safety requires trust in our legal system, but a system that feeds human beings into the mass deportation machine on the basis of unproven allegations or even disproven allegations, sometimes without any accusation of wrongdoing at all, is not a system that can hold the community's trust. This law says that Maryland will not use false allegations to help separate families. It affirms that innocent until proven guilty should apply to everyone, regardless of immigration status. It closes a loophole that allowed police officers to provide information to ICE about people that they stopped or encountered but didn't even arrest. And it requires that our law enforcement and our jail officials remain focused on public safety, not on helping ICE meet arrest quotas at the expense of our community. I think they're common sense ideas. I think most people in Maryland agree with them. But before this law went into effect, sheriffs around the state had decided that any arrest, no matter how minor, and no matter whether the allegations turned out to be true or false, was a good enough reason to put that person into the deportation pipeline.
Shame! Shame! No more!
No more. And what that meant for us as public defenders is that we would have to tell mothers and fathers and spouses that yes, the judge released your loved one because the judge could see that she is not a flight risk and she is not a danger to anyone, but no, she is not coming home today. She's going to be arrested by ICE and she will probably never have a day in court. Even worse, we had to look our clients in the eyes and tell them that their innocence wouldn't save them. Even if we win your case, even if the state realizes its mistake and dismisses the charges, even if those charges are dismissed, the sheriff is still going to send you into the deportation pipeline. That's going to happen at the hands of somebody wearing a Maryland uniform. I have had that conversation many times, and I have seen the frustration and then the despair in people's faces as the trust in our system drains out of it. And after this law has passed, I hope I never have to have that conversation again. We all know that our legal system is not perfect. It has biases, it can be manipulated, and it just plain makes mistakes because it's run by humans. And even when we're doing our best, we make mistakes. But we know about these imperfections, and that's what due process is for. Through the right to counsel, the presumption of innocence, the right to confront and cross-examine the witnesses in the case, we do our best to correct for those abuses and those biases and to make our way to a just outcome. It's a difficult process, it is an imperfect process, but it's critical to the rule of law. And when the state hands people over to face exile and separation from their family, without regard for the outcome of that process, it sets all of those systems' flaws in stone. With the Community Trust Act in effect, though, I am relieved to be able to tell my clients and their families that the state will no longer be short-circuiting due process by helping ICE to deport them before their day in court, or by saying that your innocence doesn't matter, because now in Maryland, innocence matters for everyone. That is a real. There is much more work to be done, but there are injustices that will not happen because of all of your work to pass this law, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Quickly, I just wanted to recognize again a couple of folks that we hadn't recognized before. Again, Delegate David Moon, of course. We're going to the Office of Senator Malcolm Agustin. Thank you so much. A couple of leaders that couldn't be here today, but that send their love and been critical to these victories. Of course, Delegate Charkoudian, Senator Will Smith, who was really vital in defense of this on the floor. President Bill Ferguson, whose help we would not get this bill without his leadership. And of course, our amazing Speaker of the House, Jocelyn Peña Melendez. And a couple of partners as well. Baji, Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Yeah. And the American Business Council. Thank you so much for your support. Yes. And now I'm gonna go. We're almost through with the program. But next, I want to invite an amazing speaker, another steady champion when it comes to the civil rights, when it comes to any time any Marylander faces an injustice. Dana Vickers, Executive Director, ACLU, Maryland.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure, a joy to be here. My remarks are going to be short. The first thing that I want to say is to George, Nifa, and Catherine and your amazing staff. As soon as Juliana and Evan get an office, I'd like to be able to share an office with them. My name is Dana Vickers Shelley. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Maryland, and just a few moments ago, I hope this was recorded, George, because I heard you say my favorite favorite two sentences. We'd love to sue the Trump administration, and we win. And let's remember that the challenges that we face as community and why the passage of these bills has been so important in Maryland. Let's remember that despite Maryland being called or considered a blue state, Black and brown people, our humanity is not respected nor protected. And that's not because of what's happening in the federal administration, it's because of history in the state of Maryland. Let's remember this blue state is a state where people were enslaved. Let's remember this blue state is a state where Haitian folks living and working on the Eastern Shore are under threat from law enforcement and government officials to be protected and safe. Let's remember that people across our state, even with the final passage of 287G and the passage of the Community Trust Act, cannot presume that they'll always be safe. Let's remember that we must stand up to consistently protect our rights. Regardless of the documents you have in your wallet, in your purse, in your glove compartment at home, you have rights. You have First Amendment rights to speak out on behalf of yourself, your community. This is how we make a difference. The people united will never, ever be defeated. Thank you so much for all of your work.
Bueno, ¿escucharon eso? Digo, el pueblo unido jamás será. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Woo! Okay, now to conclude the speaking portion, and then I have a little special treat for you guys at the end. But to conclude this part, I'd like to bring up Pastor Kevin Slayton of the Northwood Applewood United Methodist Church.
Next, yeah. You ready for game one tonight?
Good morning still. I wrote my comments to read them because I feel this day is important. But it was confirmed for me last night as I finished reading Clay Canton's book, Burn Down Master's House. And when I woke up this morning, I felt horrible. I said, I'm going to call Nympha and give her my apology if I'm not going to be able to make it. I thought, how selfish is that? If you consider the suffering that people have gone through, that my ancestors have endured, me sort of enduring a little margin is nothing. And so before I begin, I want to acknowledge, because the book reminded me of its characters, Charity and Josephine, of the power of black and brown women. Nympha ain't no joke. And if you get through her, you're going to get your ass whooped by Cat. And if you're still moving, Yannette will join in. Kim Bropiak will join in. Women have always been holding it down. So today is a day of gratitude and celebration, but also a renewed commitment. As an African American faith leader, I stand here mindful that my own story is rooted in one of a people who know what it means to struggle for dignity, recognition, and belonging. My ancestors endured the horrors of enslavement, Jim Crow segregation, challenged exclusion, and organized communities that demanded America to live up to its highest ideals. Because of that history, I understand that justice is never given freely. It is won through faith, sacrifice, courage, and collective action. And that is why the passage of the Community Trust Act was so significant. The legislation represents more than just public policy. It's a declaration of our values as a people. It says that Maryland understands that public safety is strengthened when trust exists between communities and the institutions that are called services. It recognizes that families should not have to live in fear simply because of where they were born. It affirms the dignity and humanity of our immigrant neighbors, our co-workers, classmates, and fellow worshipers. For people of faith, this moment, I believe, is deeply spiritual. Every major faith tradition teaches us that every person bears an inherent worth and dignity. Scripture reminds us that we are to welcome the stranger, to protect the vulnerable, and seek justice for those who've been pushed to the margins of society. The question before us has never been simply, what does the law allow? The question has always been, what does love require? Love requires courage. This victory did not happen by accident. It happened because organizers organized. It happened because communities mobilized. It happened because immigrants shared their stories. It happened because advocates refused to be silent and shut up. It happened because coalitions were built across race, faith, language, and geography. Power was then built. Relationships were built. Hope was built. So the passage of the Community Trust Act is evident that when ordinary people come together around extraordinary values, they can move institutions and even transform public policy. I want to particularly acknowledge the faith community. For years, clergy and congregations across this state have opened their sanctuaries, educated their members, marched in the streets, met with legislators, testified in hearings, prayed publicly, and stood beside immigrant families during some of their most difficult moments. We did not show up because it was politically convenient. We showed up because our faith demanded it. And let me be clear, our work is not finished. This victory is significant. But justice is never a destination. It's an ongoing journey. The same courage that brought us to this moment will be required in the days ahead. The same boldness that challenged fear must continue to challenge division. The same moral conviction that built this movement must continue to strengthen it. There will be those who will tell us, slow down, stop it, don't you have enough by now? There will be those who will tip to sow fear and more division. There will be those who seek to divide Black communities versus Latino communities, white communities versus Black communities. But we know better now. We know that our futures are intertwined. What impacts one directly affects us all indirectly. We know that an attack on dignity of one community threatens the dignity of all of our communities. And we know that when we stand together, we are stronger than we are standing apart. So today we celebrate, but tomorrow we must continue organizing. We must continue building power. We must continue advocating. We must continue fighting and showing up. And we must continue believing that Maryland can become even greater, an even greater example of what justice really looks like. I leave you the words that have been mentioned today by Dr. King. He said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. The reason it bends towards justice is because courageous people, like those who have gathered here, put their hands to the plow and begin to pull. Grab the ark by its neck and begin to pull in the same direction. So today we celebrate another bend toward justice. And my prayer is that God will give us the strength to keep pulling. God bless you.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Pastor Kevin, and congratulations on the Knicks. I think you're a fan. Good luck. So, thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you. Muchas gracias a todos que nos acompañaron. Ahora tenemos una parte muy especial y es el meollo de la celebración de hoy. So, thank you to everyone that joined us. Thank you to all our wonderful speakers. Today, let's get to the heart of what we came together to celebrate. This is a community celebration of